My name is Leora Voss, 30 years old. It was one of those calls where I already knew the answer before I even picked up. Dad's name flashed across my phone at 10:52 a.m. on a weekday. He never called during work hours unless something was wrong, or more accurately, unless they needed something. I let it ring twice while staring at the corner of my desk, the screen of my laptop frozen on an unread email. My coffee had already gone cold. By the third ring, I exhaled and answered. His voice came fast, like he'd been rehearsing. "It's urgent, Leora. Brandon's tuition is overdue. They've sent final notices. If we don't pay, they'll drop him. He's this close to graduating. One more semester, just this once." I heard Mom muttering in the background, words blurred, but heavy with pressure. This could ruin everything. Then Dad said the number. Not 10,000, not 12, exactly $11,500. Precise, trimmed, like they'd already negotiated the figure, like they'd rehearsed it to sound both dire and reasonable. I felt my jaw tighten. Doesn't he have scholarships? Didn't he get financial aid? Dad's tone shifted, sharp with frustration. He missed a few deadlines. It happens, but he promised, this time he promised, this will lead to real long-term success. That line, I'd heard it before. Brandon's favorite trick, overpromise, underdeliver, then wrap it in inspirational quotes he'd half memorized from YouTube. And every single time, my parents swallowed it whole. They used almost identical words when they begged me for his car repairs, for a new laptop, for that networking trip in Miami he just had to attend. Every single emergency packaged neatly as an investment in his future. And every single time, they came to me. I stared at the wall above my desk, fighting the familiar weight in my chest. I told myself I wasn't naive anymore, that I could see the pattern for what it was. But fear whispered louder. If I didn't help, and he failed, I would always be the reason. The scapegoat. The ungrateful one. I wired the money that afternoon, not because I believed Brandon, not because I believed my parents, but because I couldn't stand the thought of carrying the blame. Days passed in silence. No thank you, no acknowledgement, not even a lazy text from Brandon pretending gratitude, just nothing. Then came Sunday. I was meal prepping when my phone buzzed. A text from my cousin Jenna, just a screenshot. Brandon standing in a casino, not sheepish or caught off guard, celebrating. An overpriced button-down, champagne bottle in hand, arms draped around two women I'd never seen before. And Troy, his idiot friend, had captioned it, "Free money hits different." I stared at the photo until my chest ached. It wasn't just the money, though. Yes, $11,500 wasn't pocket change. It was the disrespect, the planning, the audacity. This wasn't spur of the moment. They'd waited for my transfer before booking this little getaway. My parents had to know. They couldn't have missed the signs, which meant they weren't duped. They were complicit. I dropped my knife on the counter, hands trembling, and I started remembering. Every urgent call, every last-minute deadline, every manipulation repackaged as obligation. It wasn't generosity, it was control. All those years, I thought I was being the good daughter, the reliable one, but they never planned for Brandon to stand on his own. He didn't need to, because I was always the invisible safety net, their emergency fund, their walking ATM. But not anymore. I didn't respond to Jenna. I didn't text Brandon. I didn't call my parents. Instead, I began cataloging. Like an auditor sifting through ledgers, I replayed every transaction, every lie. And as I did, something inside me shifted. I stopped thinking like their daughter and started thinking like someone who was owed. I remembered something Mom had bragged about in January over coffee at their house. She'd practically staged a performance, showing off a velvet box of vintage jewelry. Her grandmother's set, supposedly worth around 20 grand. She made a show of locking it in the closet, bottom shelf, her voice syrupy with pride. "For Brandon's future wedding," she said, "our family's legacy." That memory clicked into place now, sharp as glass. If they were fine watching me lose thousands to cover Brandon's fabricated emergencies, then they didn't deserve to keep treasures they only valued as props in their golden boy narrative. It wasn't just about revenge. It was about balance. That night, I lay awake in the dark, ceiling fan slicing shadows across the room. My dog shifted at my feet, breathing steady. I whispered to myself the words I had never said out loud. "I'm done being your safety net." But I wasn't going to announce it. Not yet. No. This time I wouldn't fight on their stage, under their rules. This time I would take something back, something they never saw coming. Saturday morning, I drove to my parents' house like nothing was wrong. I brought 2 bags of groceries, smiling at Mom when she opened the door and made small talk about traffic. She beamed, relieved, as if my presence alone meant the last request had been forgiven. Dad bragged about the lemon tree in the yard, watering can in hand, showing me how many blossoms it had this season. Brandon wasn't home. Perfect. Inside, Mom busied herself in the laundry room. I wandered the hallway like I always did, carrying a bag of sweaters I'd meant to drop off. My heart hammered, but my face stayed calm. When I reached their bedroom, I slipped inside. The closet door wasn't locked. Of course it wasn't. They trusted their myth of family loyalty too much to imagine otherwise. Bottom shelf, just as she'd said months ago. The jewelry box sat there, unassuming, like it hadn't been turned into a performance piece at family dinners. I didn't take everything. That would have been obvious. I chose 3 pieces, enough to cause panic but not immediate suspicion. A bracelet, a ring, a pair of earrings. They slid neatly into the folds of the sweater bag. By the time Mom returned, I was in the kitchen unloading groceries. She offered me coffee. Dad came in with his lemon tree story again. Everything was normal, or so they thought. I said goodbye an hour later, hugging Mom, thanking her for the coffee. She had no idea. They noticed 5 days later. It started with a text from Mom, a rambling paragraph with no punctuation. "Hey, honey, have you seen my jewelry box lately? I can't find the bracelet. I thought maybe I loaned it to Aunt Lori. Do you remember?" I let the message sit unread for 2 hours. Then I typed 1 sentence. "I haven't been in your room in years. No emojis, no reassurance." The dots appeared, disappeared, reappeared, but no reply came. That night, she left a voicemail, voice wobbling between casual and panicked. They were deep cleaning, she said, hoping nothing got misplaced during the holidays. Then she slipped in the word that made my jaw clench. Borrowed. "Did you borrow something from the box, sweetheart?" Borrowed, as if theft and entitlement were the same thing. I didn't call back. I knew exactly what was happening inside that house. Dad defensive, insisting no one would dare. Mom scribbling lists, trying to recall who had been inside. Brandon shrugging, pretending to help while secretly wondering if he was a suspect. The cleaning lady questioned. Neighbors asked if they saw anything, paranoia spreading like smoke. Exactly what I wanted. But I wasn't reckless. The day after I took the pieces, I'd had them appraised quietly through a coworker's contact. Turned out Mom had underestimated. The 3 items alone were worth close to $27,000. I kept the receipts, tucked them in a folder, date-stamped proof of value. Nearly 20 grand in my possession, while they begged me for $11,500. The irony tasted bitter and perfect at the same time. Then a new twist, Brandon called. Not once, 4 times in a row. Finally I answered. His voice was tense but fake chill, like he was trying to sell me something. "Hey, weird question. Mom's freaking out. Something's missing, like jewelry. Dad's checking cameras. You haven't seen anything, right?" I let silence stretch until he fumbled. "It's just crazy timing, you know, right after the tuition thing. Makes you wonder." I smiled, though he couldn't see it. "You think someone stole from you?" He paused. "Not me, but yeah, maybe. People are sketchy these days." He kept talking, vague questions, fishing. I gave him nothing. When he hung up, I knew he suspected me. Not because of evidence, but because in his twisted little mind, this was exactly the kind of stunt he would pull. Projection was his native tongue. But then something else happened. 3 days later, I got a notification from Venmo. Brandon's public feed. A $75 payment to someone named Donnie, captioned, "For the footage." I clicked the profile, bio read, event security, installs, review pulls. My stomach dropped. They'd gone through the house cameras. I had been careful. Gloves. Quick in and out. No lights. No fingerprints. The garage door only opened for minutes. No angles near the closet. But then a memory surfaced. Faint. Unsettling. A thump I'd heard when leaving. Like a drawer closing. I'd brushed it off as the dog or the wind. I texted Jenna, who else was at the house that day. She replied after a long pause. Brandon's girlfriend came by mid-morning. Said she left her charger. Why? Brandon's girlfriend. I hadn't even known he had one. Not a party fling. Someone with access. Unannounced access. The timing was too perfect. If she walked in through the front while I was slipping out the back, cameras might catch her. And Brandon, already paranoid, would spiral. Jenna's next text came unprompted. He thinks Selena might have taken something. He's trying not to freak her out, but he's freaking out. Better than I hoped. I typed one sentence to Brandon that night. Maybe you should ask your girlfriend what she saw. His reply came in seconds, then disappeared, then nothing. And I knew the fire had started. Because for once I didn't have to be the suspect. They were already turning on each other. It didn't take long for the explosion to go public. 2 days later, Jenna sent me a screen recording from Facebook. Brandon's girlfriend, Alina, apparently, had posted a status wide open for everyone to see. Imagine giving everything to someone who treats you like a suspect. I hope your mommy finds her bracelet. I watched it twice, then a third time, stunned. She hadn't just broken up with him. She'd taken a sledgehammer to the family's carefully polished image. The comments came fast. Friends asking what happened, relatives lurking, extended family speculating. My mother, ever the dramatist, responded the next morning with a Bible verse about restoring what was lost, as if scripture could cover the rot beneath. Then Dad called. He left a voicemail, voice stiff, rehearsed. Let's all sit down, face to face, make this right. I deleted it. Because the truth was, I didn't want to sit down. I didn't want their script, their theatrics, their guilt trips disguised as reconciliation. Instead, I dialed a number I hadn't called in years. Danielle? A pause, then a laugh. Took you long enough. Danielle was my cousin on Dad's side. The only one in the family who saw through the Golden Boy act long before I did. Sharp, fearless, and branded difficult by my parents because she never bowed to Brandon's charm. She'd cut ties years ago after my parents refused her a loan. Small, manageable, with receipts and a notarized plan, while handing Brandon $6,000 for a second car. She ghosted after that. No dramatic goodbye. Just gone. But at a wedding once, she'd leaned close and whispered, "They'll bleed you dry if you let them." I hadn't listened then. I was listening now. I told her everything. The tuition scam, the wire transfer, the casino post, the jewelry, even my part in it, the 3 missing pieces tucked away, quietly appraised. There was a long silence on the line, then her voice dropped, low and certain. "Do you remember Aunt Carol's boxes?" "Barely," I said. "Yeah, I went through them once. Found records that didn't belong. Granddad's life insurance payout. Big one. Most of it disappeared. Not funeral costs, not divided fairly. Disappeared. I traced some of it, straight into one of your dad's old business ventures. Never disclosed, never repaid." My throat went dry. She continued, "If he moved that money without disclosure, the estate can be reopened. It's not just about jewelry anymore. It's about intent, fraud, paper trails. We could drag this into court." I pressed my fingers to my temples, pulse hammering. This wasn't just sibling favoritism or parental blind spots. This was theft dressed up as legacy, generational betrayal. "I've already got someone looking into it," Danielle said, almost gently, "but I can't do it alone." I swallowed. "I'm in." That week, I covered my tracks. I created a digital footprint for the jewelry. Private listings with time-stamped appraisals, photographs, chain of custody documentation. Not for sale, not to profit, to prove they existed, to establish provenance. If questions came, I'd have the receipts. Meanwhile, Brandon cracked. He showed up at my door one night, unannounced, clutching a plastic grocery bag like it was proof of innocence. His face carried that fake worried expression he pulled out whenever he needed something. "Hey, Leora, can we talk?" I didn't open the door fully. He sighed, leaning against the frame. "I don't know who to trust anymore. Alina's threatening to call the cops if I don't clear her name. Mom's crying every night. Something valuable's gone, and... Look, I just need to know. Did you take it?" I locked eyes with him, steady. "What jewelry?" His mouth opened, closed. He stammered something about cameras, timelines, about how I was the only one besides Alina who had been there. His voice cracked on the last word. I let him spiral for another minute, then closed the door in his face. Through the peephole, I watched him pace, arms crossed, muttering to himself. He looked less like a golden boy and more like a cornered animal. Finally, he walked away. That same evening, Danielle texted me a screenshot, an email from a paralegal, formal request filed for estate financial documents. And there it was, the first domino falling. The jewelry was just the spark. The real fire was in the ledgers, the transfers, the buried truths. And this time, they wouldn't just lose a bracelet or a ring. They stood to lose the entire story they'd been selling us for years. The first cracks didn't come from my parents' mouths. They came from paper. Danielle forwarded me an email from the estate lawyer a week later. We've received communication from Ronald M. expressing concern over the scope of the audit request and requesting to postpone formal review. Ronald M., my father. The word postpone said everything. He remembered exactly what he'd done with Granddad's life insurance payout. He knew the audit would find the trail. And for once, he wasn't blustering about family loyalty or lecturing about respect. He was stalling. Meanwhile, every document Danielle unearthed painted the same picture. Misused funds, shady transfers, half-baked ventures dressed up as opportunities. All of it hidden behind silence and the family's blind trust. At night, I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop open, the glow of spreadsheets and scanned records turning my face pale. My dog lay at my feet, sensing the tension in my stillness. With every file I read, I felt the ground shift. This wasn't just about Brandon's tuition. It wasn't even about the jewelry anymore. It was about a pattern stretching back years, decades, designed to protect one person at the cost of everyone else. Then the phone rang. Mom. It was 9:42 p.m. Her voice low, as if Dad wasn't supposed to hear. Leora, we don't have to keep dragging this out. We're family. We should talk. I didn't answer. She hesitated, then added more softly, maybe we all made mistakes. Maybe. I pressed the phone to my ear, waiting. Which part are you talking about? The tuition lie? The money for the casino? The jewelry? Or the estate you never told us about? Her silence stretched, a crackling thread. Finally, she whispered, I don't want to fight. That was new. Fighting had always been her sport. The next day, Dad called. I didn't pick up. His voicemail was clipped, rehearsed. Let's sit down. Make this right. They were unraveling. And Brandon? He vanished from social media. No gym selfies, no motivational quotes, no casino photos. Jenna later told me he'd moved back home just for a few months after Alina dumped him. Couldn't keep up with rent. My parents, once so proud of his independence, now had him sulking in their guest room, darkening the house with silence. Their golden boy had turned into their liability. I, on the other hand, kept moving. I filed insurance on the jewelry under my own name, not to cash in, not even to threaten them, but to protect it. Proof of ownership, proof of value, documented and untouchable. Sometimes I caught myself staring at the folder where I kept the receipts, the appraisal, the photos, not out of greed, but out of something sharper, control. For the first time, I wasn't the one scrambling to clean up their mess. I was holding the cards, and they knew it. Neighbors started to notice too. One, a man who'd lived across the street for years, casually mentioned to me at the grocery store, your dad used to talk big about investments at barbecues. Said he had the magic touch. I smiled faintly. Did he ever mention where the money came from? The man chuckled, oblivious. Said he had backing from family. Everyone thought he meant his dad's will. Backing. That word stung. Not backing. Theft. The family myth, my dad as a savvy provider, Brandon as the promising scholar, was cracking under the weight of receipts, ledgers, and silence. But silence never lasted long in my family. Because the estate review had a date now, on the calendar, fixed, and I could feel it in my bones. Someone was going to flip before that day arrived. Maybe Dad, cornered by his own paper trail. Maybe Mom, trying to save face. Or maybe Brandon, desperate to claw his way back into someone's good graces. I didn't know who it would be, but I knew the fire was spreading. The silence broke again, but this time it sounded less like defiance and more like desperation. Mom called first, her voice cracked with fatigue. She didn't mention Brandon, didn't mention Alina, didn't even touch the subject of the missing jewelry. She just said, we don't have to keep living like this. We're family. Let's talk. I sat there, phone pressed to my ear, staring at the dark window reflection of my own face. For years, that plea, we are family, had been enough to reel me back in. But now it sounded hollow, rehearsed. The next day, Dad tried. His voicemail was clipped, like he was reading from a script. Let's all sit down and make this right. It was clear. They weren't protecting Brandon anymore. They were trying to contain him. Jenna confirmed what I already suspected. Brandon had moved back home. Alina had dumped him, his rent was unpaid, and his little world of borrowed confidence had collapsed. Mom cried at night, Dad buried himself in silence, and Brandon sulked in the guest room like a shadow of the golden boy they'd built their lives around. Meanwhile, Danielle and I kept digging. Every document dragged into the light was another nail in the coffin of their family mythology. The insurance money trail was undeniable. Transfers, withdrawals, all pointing back to my father. His silence wasn't guilt, it was strategy. He was hoping time would soften us, hoping delay would dull the blade. But I'd stopped being their daughter the moment they turned me into an ATM. Now I was their auditor. I insured the jewelry under my own policy, not to sell, not to flaunt, to secure, to prove. My receipts, my appraisals, my chain of custody, everything tidy, traceable, mine. For the first time in years, I slept without my phone buzzing on the nightstand. No emergency calls, no panicked texts, just quiet. And yet, the quiet didn't feel like peace at first. It felt like the heavy pause before someone flips a table. I braced myself every morning, half expecting a letter, a summons, a scream on my voicemail. But nothing came. Then, slowly, I realized the only people panicking were them. Neighbors whispered that my parents had stopped hosting gatherings, that they looked worn, thinner, distant. Even Brandon's old friend Troy had posted something cryptic online about not all free money being free. The cracks weren't just showing, they were spreading. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt steady, cold, like finally standing on solid ground after years of sinking sand. One evening, Danielle and I met for lunch. The first time we'd seen each other in years. She hugged me, sharp and brief. "You look lighter," she said. "I feel it," I admitted. She smirked. "They've been calling me too. Same script. Let's talk. Let's not drag this out. But we're not kids anymore. We don't owe them our silence." Her words echoed later that night as I sat on my porch, the jewelry folder in my lap, the cicadas humming around me. For once, I didn't feel like prey waiting for the next blow. I felt like someone holding the final ledger. Because here's the truth. My parents taught me loyalty meant sacrifice. That love meant giving until I was empty. That being the good daughter meant letting Brandon take and take while I carried the weight. But loyalty without respect isn't love, it's control. And I had finally broken free. So when Dad's number flashed on my phone again, I didn't pick up. I watched it ring, fade, and ring again. The bridge behind me wasn't burned by my hand. It was doused in gasoline by theirs, lit the day they lied, stolen the day they chose him over me again and again. Now that bridge smolders quietly in my rearview mirror. I don't wonder if they'll call again. I know they will. I know the script by heart. We're family. Let's talk. One last chance. But this time I'm not answering. Because I'm not the villain. I'm not the savior. I'm just done. And that's enough.